Jeffrey Dahmer soaked in blood. The Unabomber blowing up. Waco, Texas, and Heaven's Gates. Aliens modified, meant for mapes. Hitler faked his death and then escaped. Bigfoot and the Mothman. Son of Sam talking to dogs again. Witches, ghosts, and goblins. Mysterious noise and hauntings. Dark arts and the skull and bones. Most celebrities are probably cloned. So if you're feeling all alone, crack a beer and get stoned. I welcome you to the podcast Strange Brew. We're here to entertain you. We're here to entertain you.
It's about to get strange.
Listening to that intro makes me miss my boy, man. I miss the skinny, elongated skeleton man.
Alien.
Yeah, I do miss the boy. And for all the fans out there, the Bilbo Baggins, the infamous Billy Cooper, that's not his name, but, you know, we used to call him all sorts of things. Billy Zane, every week it would be a different name. He will be back on soon, and you know why? It's because I had to pay for a mic and send it to him. Luckily, he's paying interest on it, but for some reason, I don't know if he has bad credit or some shit, but he just it never showed up. It kept getting canceled.
Where is he living right now?
Not British Columbia, New Brunswick. I kept calling it Nova Scotia, and I was like, he's out that way. New Brunswick.
Is that like middle of nowhere kind of thing?
Kind of. So, so he's like out east by like Newfoundland. It's always like these new, like we discovered this shit out of nowhere. New Brunswick, Nova Scotia. So it's the east end of Canada because they're so widespread. And I was like, if it doesn't show up and you keep getting this cancel thing on Amazon, I'm like, go to Best Buy. Cause I was just there getting the new camera and stuff like that. And they have like some really dope mics and shit. So I was like, go there. Get it, you know, and then we can be ready for this stuff. And I was like, you still want to be part of the show right now? You do, right? And he was like, yeah, I miss it. I want to be back in part of the folds. I was like, I got to stop. I joked with him. I was like, come back on so I can stop talking about Jews. It's like, I was like, we need to like shift this back into fucking gear, son. And then I was like, all right, well, you know what I'm going to do? Give me your fucking address. I'm gonna send the mic to you, and it's coming tomorrow. So for all the fans out there, man, we're gonna be locking and loaded, and it's gonna be all three of us on a lot of episodes. I think we'll be able to pull off. I'm excited.
It's hilarious that you had to order a microphone and have it sent to him.
I know it's absurd the things I have to do for the show to make sure it runs properly because I'm sure the fans miss him. And like when I say things, man, just remember everybody, don't get offended. I'm just fucking kidding. I don't believe any human being is bad unless you murder someone. You start murdering people, man, I might not like you so much.
I don't think he's kidding. But
I love everybody. And at the end of the day, right, as I've said many times, I'm just a man with questions, and you are back. I've already had 2 scotches. I don't know how well this is going to go. I have another scotch with soda. It is a Sunday, so I don't know if this is the greatest idea, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I'm your host. You know me now. I am the crazy man, the Raptilian, I don't know what I am anymore. I am just a man with many questions and a lot of energy. And who am I joined by?
I am one of the hosts of Class Horrorcast, the horniest little boy in horror. Aaron.
The little boy thing I think needs to be taken out.
You need to get rid of the little boy part.
You guys say the horniest man. I'm a fucking man.
I thought it was funnier saying horniest little boy.
Because technically, and I have some. What'd you think of the design I created out of AI for one of the shirts?
Oh yeah, nobody's seen that yet, have they?
No, it's a very seductive lady licking a knife, and she's horny for the horror. We're gonna be developing some really cool merch on Class Horrorcast side, so make sure to check that out. I have a ton of ideas. What in the world are you drinking? That's a big bottle of something.
Water.
Yeah, it's huge, man.
And it's fucking gross.
That's like the bottles that if you go on the back sites of like Pornhub that the chicks are shoving in their butt. Can you show the audience on the video?
I surely can.
Yeah,
it's like a 2 liter. Just for scale, I have a very large head, so
it's
scale,
listen,
everybody.
It starts rough, but then you get a little break halfway through.
Yeah, halfway through. Yeah.
So this was actually your idea to cover Cropsey. This is a pretty interesting topic to say the least. When I was watching the doc, though, I've definitely watched it before, and the weird thing is, my wife remembered it too. And back when we maybe first started dating or something like that, or when we were younger, she like remembers maybe watching it. She had we used to hang out in her room and like drink and hang out. We're like early 20s or teenagers, and we used to watch like Ghost Adventures and some of the weirder stuff. And she's like, I remember watching this like in my room, and we had it on the TV, probably having a drink or something like that. So it's definitely been around for a while.
Yeah, and it's way more popular, I think, than people. It is definitely one of those documentaries that most people have probably seen.
Yeah, because it was everywhere at the time.
Know, yeah. Like a lot of people don't know they've seen it.
Can you like asylum stuff? I feel like we came to that conclusion on one of the haunted episodes that when we first started doing this shenanigans that we have ensued and doing all the time and between both shows. But was your uncle in an asylum or was it a friend? I remember you telling a story, it's hazy.
Yeah, it was my uncle. I actually can't remember like the specifics of it, of how long, but it was a pretty extensive period of time he spent in a now closed down mental hospital here called Saint Senans.
What's it called?
Like Saint Senans.
Weird. It's almost like sane sentence. Now you're being sentenced to get you sane.
Yeah, but it's since closed down. It's like a town over from here. And basically exactly what you're probably picturing, like a mental hospital looking like. It's similar to the look of Willowbrook or whatever from this Cropsey story. Like it's that just those big like freaky looking fucking place. But yeah, I've always kind of been fascinated with buildings like that. And look, I don't know, maybe a lot of it is just bullshit. Like people attach stories to places like that.
I don't know, but it's like some of the energy, man. There's something to do with asylums and the energy that resonates there, even within the people that stay there,
Yeah, true. Yeah, maybe so.
Because people that are mentally unstable, and then we've seen this within, histories, people don't really care about those with mental deficiencies.
What did you think of the documentary itself? I'm interested to get your thoughts.
So I thought it was pretty good considering the time that it was developed. When was it?
2009.
Ooh, yeah. So it was back in the day. So it came out when I was like 17. Yeah, so it makes sense. It came out when I was like 18. So it makes sense that I would have probably seen it in my early 20s. I thought it was well done. I think they did a good job at understanding the situation of what was happening and trying to analyze like, hey, how did we get here? But it is weird because at the end of the day, like asylums are such a scary. It's scary in my opinion. There's a lot of weird stuff that happens within asylums, and people not caring and the mistreatment of those who stay there, and it's freaky, man.
Just to kind of touch, I guess, on the documentary again. So it was done by a guy called Joshua Zeman, and I'm not sure if it's his wife or his girlfriend or whatever who had made it with him, but people may also know him. He done obviously Cropsey. He done one of the more recent ones would have been Murder Mountain on Netflix.
Is that one about the drug dealers up in the hills?
Who did that? Yeah, Sons of Sam, the Netflix.
That's cool.
Yeah, he done that as well.
What? He did that? That was actually fairly well done.
Yeah, he's done that as well. He's done a lot of stuff.
Because that was the connection to his, to which we'll get definitely. He's in everything that's in the intro song is definitely going to be done at some point. But Berkowitz, he specifically focused on the connection to the Satanist aspect of it and the demonic side of some of maybe the possession stuff that I found. Like even the Richard Ramirez documentary, they made that one that came out recently where they focused mostly on him as like a boogeyman, but they didn't analyze why he was a boogeyman. But I found the Son of Sam one was doing something different. Why he was this Satanist and what was talking to him, and
Yeah, and it's funny actually because we'll see it in this story a little bit later as well. There is some potential crossovers between that whole Berkowitz thing and Andre Rand, and that whole there is a potential connection there. I don't know. I don't want to say too much because I feel like I'll get into my opinion rather than like facts. So I don't know if we want to jump into some of the, I guess, the lore first before we start getting into like, our opinions.
Let's jump into it for sure, because it's going to be, I want to do this justice because it is something that is a very famous story. And when I think about Cropsey, I think about like an urban legend. Really, and then you start to dive into that it is based on factual history and anything surrounding insane asylums, especially at this time. I feel like we're shrouded in mystery and weird stories, and concerning the staff didn't really care about the people that were held there, and there was no real treatment for these people with psychological conditions that... who knows what actually caused it. You don't want my opinion on what caused it, but one of the scariest documentaries in recent memory tells the legend of Cropsey through the eyes of the people who live there, through the nightmare of an urban legend come to life. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, mentally handicapped children systematically started going missing on Staten Island, and no one knew what happened to them, at least not until the police were able to track down a man named Andre Rand, which I'll get in my opinion about him later, a vagrant former custodian at Willowbrook State School, which was, it's not a school, it's an asylum, which was responsible for the disappearances, maybe. The 2009 film by Staten Island locals Joshua Zeman and Barbara, how would you pronounce your last name?
I have no, something like that.
Kia, whatever, is an examination into the fear of the boogeyman monster named Cropsey that follows kids through their youth, and how many, how many ways the fear is entirely warranted. And this, we got this this article from Ranker. They do a good job at breaking down a lot of this stuff, so we should just dive right into it. The opening of the documentary explains who Cropsey is, a shadowy figure as an escaped mental patient who lives in the tunnels beneath the former Willowbrook State School on Staten Island. And I just think it's funny they call it a school. It's not a school. They're not teaching them shit, man. They didn't teach them how to wipe their own fucking asses, huh? Yeah.
The footage from that place is one of the most haunting things I've ever seen.
We will bring it up very shortly.
I feel like it's kind of really important as well. I think historically for like that area, and then just that's one of the, I think I mentioned this before on a show, like I don't know, like a year ago, maybe more, about we were trying to come up with that, and I was like, I was trying to explain. It was this like black and white footage, and there was all these like kids, and they were like naked and fucking freaky looking, malnourished, and they were like covered in shit on the floor and stuff like that. It's just so haunting. It's just horrific. Yeah, it's
frightening, and the way they didn't do anything, and obviously a lot of these institutions were understaffed, and the staff didn't care. And I always bring up like certain movies, right? Like that like you see this happening where they don't care about what's certain horror movies, slasher films, where they have this kind of setup where it's like, oh, he's held in this mental institution, but nobody cares. Like the nurses are fucking the staff members, the guys in the white jumpsuits that are essentially hired to hold down the mental patients when they're like injecting it with stuff and try to get them like, it's realistically, if you see those movies and these documentaries that are based on real things, it is like a lot of the dudes had to be like kind of someone strong enough to hold down some of these mentally ill people that were having all sorts of spasms and outbursts that you would need some of those staffs that would be able to withstand the strength, the R-word strength that many people have come to know.
Yeah, and I would also go as far as to say there may be some sort of correlation there between, I don't know, like this is just like a conspiracy, I guess, that I have in my mind, but there may be something to the idea of you would want people who kind of don't give a fuck to do a job like that. Yeah, you would want just like big guys who don't care about if they're like hurting somebody or what they need to do. You know, they'll grab them around the neck and fucking pin them to the floor and do shit.
And realistically, at this time, right, these are people that nobody cared about. And it's very sad, you know, that maybe who knows what causes a lot of this stuff. I can make speculations on what causes some of these mental disorders, especially back then, inbreeding, vaccines, stuff like that, maybe play a part. Some of the medication, the stuff that's in the water. I do believe that people are not just born like this naturally. I think that certain chemicals and things are introduced to make people this severely handicapped. And I truly do believe that stuff, right? And people can think what they want. They can call me whatever name they like. I don't really care. If you actually analyze between healthy humans and ones that have these handicaps, it is very evident that something went wrong along the process of birthing, or with drugs they were the mother or the father was taking. Who knows what gets introduced to the system when people are being created into human beings. Your body, you know what I mean, can easily have reactions to things that they're taking, and then it can, and you've seen this. Women that smoke too much or drink alcohol when they're pregnant, or smoke crack and their kid becomes dependent, and you need to give the kid crack when he's born to make sure that he lives. Stuff like this it's horrible, but it shows that kind of aspect of it, right? That this is caused by something.
And I can definitely see, this is not in any way to condone what went on in Willowbrook or anything like that, but
they just dropped them off.
Like, for example, I spent a little bit of time today in the emergency department, and there was a guy. I couldn't really make out if he was like late teens or maybe 20s, but obviously like had severe Down syndrome, and he obviously had some sort of like health issue. They brought him in and he had like the oxygen thing on him and whatever. And he went like 2 or 3 rooms down, and it didn't click with me till I was leaving, and I just happened to look into the room where the noise was coming from. But he screamed for the entire day while I was there. Now, and I mean like blood curdling screams. This wasn't like what people maybe are envisioning, like when you try to make fun of somebody who's like mentally ill or whatever and you make those stupid noises. This was like, because I was going like somebody's, I was like somebody's going through some shit down there or something severe is happening. Like the screams were like horrifying, dude. And like I get down and the dude is like, he's in a trolley, but they have like the straps on his arms to like hold him to the bed.
That's why people got me for some of the stuff that I've said on the show about like, is that good for a human life to endure stuff like that?
I don't know. I can see, again, not saying like what they done in Willowbrook was right or anything, but I can only imagine if we go back to that time period, how people were just like frightened and horrified. And it was like, okay, it's just easier to put them in here and then forget about it.
That's what they were doing. And we've talked about this before. It's funny how like it kind of goes full circle. When we first really started doing the show together, we talked about hauntings, especially inside of asylums, and the idea of like, I didn't imply that something should be done. Like I don't agree with some of the eugenics practices that are happening nowadays to be like, well, we can find the Down syndrome within the fetus or whatever, and then we can terminate it. And I don't know if that is justified. I'm not a fan of MAID in my country, where they're trying to push legal euthanasia within children and people that are broke even, or just have mentally handicaps or whatever. I don't think there's a line you dance where it's like you're becoming almost Nazi-esque with some of the stuff that you're doing of being like, well, they're not worthy of being in society, so we should just exterminate them. And that's happening now. For people that don't understand, that's happening now, right now. But at the same time, back then, they didn't know what else to do with it. Even, these people, or maybe inbred, who knows, or their child comes out too early and has all these issues, and then if they kill it, they'll look like some animals, which, makes sense. But then they're like, we'll just put them in this asylum. And this happened with women, too, though. Like women that were like, they were combative with their husbands or disobedient with their husbands, especially at this kind of time. And they're like, just lock them up.
Yeah, and it's the same thing as like, we go to eras before that and it's like, oh, she's a witch. Similar idea.
Yeah. Even the werewolf episode, dude, people's being convicted for, well, Peter Stump and some of the dudes definitely deserved it, and we'll definitely dive down another rabbit hole with that. Somebody was sending me articles about someone that was actually in the werewolf trials that we didn't mention, and this guy is like a pure raving lunatic, and it would be interesting to cover at some point. So obviously throughout the documentary, there's this presence of fear and this looming idea of like this urban legend that actually portrays the realistic fear of residents of Staten Island, old and young alike, that have heard these stories.
Do you, just a quick question. So how do you feel about the idea of, because obviously this is what I like about this story as well. It's not just an urban legend. And like, as we'll see over the next couple of minutes, it's like an urban legend that's somehow like spilled into a real life story. Yeah, so it's not just like, the guy with a hook hand and like you go down
that's what they're talking
lane.
about, which is crazy.
Yeah, and like, it's like, you go down Lover's Lane and like the dude comes out and he's like scraping his hook and whatever. But it's like no.
It gives you, but you know what he's doing though? No one ever talks about this. You know what the hook hand guy was doing? He's giving out free abortions, man. He didn't ask for any money. He's like, I'll just do it for free. He's like, just let me stick this deep inside.
You reckon he's just a good guy?
That was a bad joke, everybody. I'm sorry.
Okay, so let's get into the first disappearance then, I guess. I don't know, my pronunciation on this surname is going to be fucking abysmal.
Schwigger? Whoa. Schwagger? Don't say that.
Schwigger, is it?
Yeah, well, let's go with that. Just don't add an N in there, and we'll be fine.
The disappearance of 12-year-old Jennifer Schwigger horrified her community. On July 9th, 1987, Jennifer, a 12-year-old girl born with Down syndrome, went missing from her Staten Island neighborhood. The last person she was reportedly seen with was 43-year-old Andre Rand, an alleged mentally ill drifter. After an intense 35-day search through the woods near Willowbrook State School, Jennifer's body was found in a shallow grave. In the Cropsey documentary, the audience actually sees the size of the search for the girl, and it's immediately apparent how much Jennifer's disappearance affected this borough. Jennifer was the fourth known missing girl, and the small island community banded together to help the girl's parents in the search. Her father commented, "I really can't fathom the amount of support, civilian and official, we have gotten."
And it's good for them too. And it's like people don't like. I make jokes on the show, and people don't understand that. Like, I am truly a caring, loving person. Even throughout like some of the stuff we've done recently with the Khazarian Mafia, and I was like, I don't want this to be to just purposely offend people. All I'm here to ask questions. I'm gonna say one of the most feel good shows that I have ever watched, and I'll be honest about this, is Love on the Spectrum. I actually really love that show because these are just like really good-hearted people that have some sort of intellectual capability that's not not normal or whatever, but that are but you see the human nature within people that do have some of these disabilities, and they're the most loving, caring people that have ever existed on this planet. And they don't have any malicious intent with a lot of things that they do or think about. They just want to also be cared about and loved. And that's why, if people understand, I'm not some sort of bigot or racist or ableist or whatever you want to call me or label me just because I've made jokes and observations about certain things. But watching that, like, I can tell you right now, it is probably one of my favorite shows to watch on a Sunday morning with a coffee and just like watch these people they're not like other humans. You could never see an autistic person start a war, or someone with Down syndrome start a war or kill another, dancing a line, but kill another person, really. That doesn't happen unless they want to label it that way, even with this case. And we'll get into it, but I don't even know if Andre Rand is the true culprit of these disappearances. And I don't know if they slapped it on just because we'll get into it. Yeah,
because It's like hard to dance the line on like how much do we say before we've given a lot of facts.
And obviously there's people that have seen this too, but I want to make it very evident that like I care about human beings. And as soon as you enter this planet and this, whatever it is, this reality, this existence, for people to cast so much judgment on some of the most, I think some people like, I think it could be caused by all sorts of things, you know, and they can rule in court of law that autism was caused by shots or whatever. But look at it from the outside. Have you watched Love on the Spectrum? These people are like the most caring, loving people to ever exist and just want to also be loved. And I don't think that's wrong of them to want that, you know?
Okay, so Andre Rand was the first person suspected of being Cropsey. In 1988, the monster of Staten Island was finally brought to life when Rand was arrested in connection with the disappearance and passing of Jennifer. Throughout the film, Rand is described as being a mentally unstable transient. He was allegedly seen with Jennifer before her disappearance, and her body was found near the place where he slept in the woods. After his arrest, he was suspected of having lured other children away, but no one was able to actually provide evidence that he was complicit in the disappearances. Most of the people who testified against him claimed that he just looked like he was someone that would take children. Rand was only convicted of abducting Jennifer. The murder charge was dismissed because jurors couldn't agree on whether he actually took her life. He received a sentence of 25 years to life, and then in 2004, 23 years after Holly Ann Hughes' disappearance, Rand was charged due to a no statute limitations. He received an additional 25 years.
See, and this is what's wild, okay? Can we just, like, look at the man for a second? There's nothing behind those eyes.
I will give it to him. He is, like, if you were going to make a documentary about someone called Cropsey and, like, a whole urban legend thing, he is one of the scarier looking motherfuckers.
Dude,
you could put his face on.
We'll play this clip to start, but, like, if you see it, there's nothing behind those eyes. And yes, I've had too many scotches, so everyone just ignore all my love for this fucking Love on the Spectrum, because that is an honest opinion. Truly love that. I wish I was more like that. I don't know how to not be angry about the state of the world. And if you talk to anyone with autism, they're like, "Fucking love the world. Just give me a."
You didn't get through the audition stage for that, then, did you not?
No, I tried. That's what I said, man. I could have autism because technically now with the spectrum, it's like so huge. They said that I had OCD. I don't touch door handles 5 times, but I get obsessed about research. So I start researching into shit, and I keep reading and reading, and I can't stop fucking reading about it. And I'm like, wow, now everyone thinks I'm a Nazi because I question Zionism or some shit. You know what I mean? It's just like, because I keep reading, and all I do is read, and I get obsessed with certain subjects. That's why they claim that I had, like, OCD. So I could be on the spectrum. I could have Asperger's.
I must have that
I sit on
I do that as well.
Yeah. That's
such a bad joke. Christ.
And then I eat them. Fucking so stupid. Okay, so let's everyone take the time to look at this if you guys are watching.
God within. Police had questioned him as early as the second day into the investigation. And after 4 weeks of making a case against the man, they finally decided they had enough to get a conviction.
Unmute your mic, Aaron. Look at this is sad, man. This guy doesn't look like he's capable of even thinking. This part fucking freaks me out, man.
You see, this is the thing, right? I don't know, so I've seen other clips of him, right? And he doesn't appear in that kind of state. So then I'm like, right.
Him up?
Yeah, so then I'm like, right, okay. Did they give him something? If they didn't give him something, what sort of like intense interrogation was he under? Because, like, say if we look at something like what's that fucking story? Remember Stephen Avery?
Yeah. Oh, Brandon Dassey. Dassey was he was not capable of. They could feed him anything.
What's the name of that fucking thing?
I can't remember right now.
Making a Murderer.
Yeah, Making a Murderer. They made him. They developed him.
Right. I genuinely believe if you look at that interrogation footage
with Brandon Dassey.
Coerced him, and like this, I'm not defending this guy because I truly don't know for sure. There was some questionable things about him, but he would have been a very, I think, in my opinion, a very easy target to. I mean, all you have to do, right? Look at that.
Yeah.
If and there's a part in the documentary where I think they have like an old acquaintance of his, and they're interviewing him, and he was explaining. I can't remember what he said, but it's some type of theory that if, for example, I show you a picture of somebody, and I say, "Oh, dude, this guy is is from my town. It's like a local legend. He kidnapped kids and abused them and stuff," and then you'll go, "Oh yeah, I can tell he like looks like that kind of guy." But then I could show somebody else that exact same picture and tell them, "Oh, this dude saved like 15 kids from a burning building in my town," and the person would go, "Yeah, I can tell he really looks like that kind of guy."
It's conditioning. Eventually, I'd like to talk about the case made for Patreon of Charlie No Face, where they just claim that guy, I don't know if you ever heard about this, but it was an urban legend style thing. This guy, Charlie No Face, I can't remember what exactly happened to his face, but the guy like had no face and would walk around town and like walk around in the outskirts, and people saw this guy and thought he was some sort of horrific creature, and then there was no basis of fact based on that he was actually some murderous. Did you look it up?
Jesus Christ!
And he was supposed to be a real person, man.
Dude, that's giving me chills.
I should go look this up. And I don't know if there's any proof that he actually did anything, but this urban legend formed around him.
But you see that, like, so if you showed me that with no context, and you told me that dude lived in your hometown when you were growing up and he had murdered a lot of people, I'd believe that. I don't know
how he can see, but and make it form a sentence. But yeah.
God, I could definitely see him being some sort of like serial killer.
And this is the issue, even with the doc. They're like, oh, and they point out him like all drooling on himself, and it sent the town or the city or whatever Staten Island in outrage over this guy and the way he looked and his appearance, and how maybe they just wanted to get a conviction of somebody because they couldn't find any evidence. And so they're like, this crazy maniac that used to work there, we can just give him a bunch of drugs to keep him docile, and he'll never know the difference because he's already on drugs because he's mentally handicapped or whatever, right? And then they put him out into the public, and they just need a couple images, and all you have to do is post guy arrested involved in this, and then all of a sudden they think that. Look at an example. Look at Russell Brand. Russell Brand accused of sexual misconduct, and then the whole world is like, "Oh, he's a rapist," and then it's like, "But is he? Like, is he? How do we know?" Right? Like, you can't just put something out there, and that's what news articles purposely do, is they condition people to believe that what you're looking at is factual when they can just skew a certain couple words to fit their narrative. That's all they have to do is kind of just set it up, and then all of a sudden, it's like everyone thinks that this guy's a serial killer, and even though he may not be.
Yeah, and again, like I'm not necessarily defending him, but at the same time, I'm not just going to sit here. Yeah, I'm not just going to sit here either and go, "Oh, well, because he looks a bit fucking weird, he's definitely."
Yeah.
Like, because this isn't even like like we done the show about Jimmy Savile. Okay, Jimmy Savile looks like a big creepy like child molester, like freak.
Yeah. Definition of a child molester.
Yeah, but the other side of it is there is like an insane amount of proof of his crimes.
Yeah.
This seems very circumstantial of like, oh, well, this dude was like a bit of a fucking like a drifter, and he like lived here and there in makeshift like campsites and stuff, and he was always a bit weird, so he obviously done it.
And it's weird. It is sad because if you look at eventually I want to talk about I can't think of it. Who's the little woman? Recently, the second part of the documentary came out where everyone thought she was an adult, but she was a child.
Oh yeah, I know. I can't think of but I know who you're talking about.
So that I wrote an episode actually before somebody else seemed to have produced it. It seems weird. There's some weird parables. It's fucking real bizarre. Natalie Grace. So I wrote this out recently, wanting to not recently, but I wrote out like months ago, wanting to cover this as Billy, just because I know for a fact that Billy does not know about this case. I know that he doesn't. Billy doesn't pay attention to anything other than his. I was gonna say his own dick in his hand, but like that. Kidding. But like he doesn't pay attention to like political issues or stuff that's going on, and a lot of the stuff that we end up doing, he has no knowledge of. So it makes it even more fascinating to like kind of talk about this stuff. But she was conditioned to believe that she was older than she was. And I believe that she was like a child, a young person. And then they put her in an apartment building. So it's the same idea as if you have someone who's mentally not fit, they have the mental capacity of like a child or a young adult, a teen. And meanwhile, he's like 40 or 50. And then so he just has to survive. If he has no one to take care of him, you know what I mean? That like he's going to just do what he can to survive. And that's kind of what Natalie Grace did. At some point she did do that. They put her in an apartment building and were like, yeah, you're an adult. And as an 8-year-old mind, even if you are someone who is the age of a 40-year-old but has the mind of an 8-year-old, you would be convinced that it's like, I got to take care of myself. I'm old enough to do this. And then all of a sudden, maybe you do murder somebody or you just do something stupid.
And there's a lot of like, I don't know if you want to jump into the next piece of the story, and then I'll kind of follow on with a thought I have that kind of ties into another reason why I think there's an argument to be made that maybe it wasn't him.
I know. So in the mid-1960s, Rand worked as a custodian at the Willowbrook State School. I hate how they call it a school because it's definitely not. Putting him in the middle of one of the ugliest blights of Staten Island and giving him direct access to mentally ill and disabled children. In 1970, Rand reportedly pleaded guilty to assaulting a 9-year-old Bronx girl and paroled in 1972. In the same year, young Araldo Rivera filmed an expose on building number 6 of Willowbrook Institution. Institution makes more sense. A school, I would beg to differ, but institution. And Araldo Rivera is an infamous mustache douchebag, in my opinion, which had formerly housed a large group of mental patients. What he found was deeply disturbing to the public. This building had been filled with severely neglected children living in very disturbing conditions, poopy pee-pee everywhere, naked children running around, slinging their poop at each other like they're some sort of monkey. After filming in the institution, Rivera noted the hardest thing to describe was the institution's smell. It would take until 1987 for Willowbrook to shut down after Rivera exposed what was going on there. While some patients were transferred to units where they could be looked after, many were abandoned without care or supervision. It is believed that they simply stayed at the institution because that's all they knew. And let's bring up this horrifying clip of goddamn Geraldo Rivera going in, and this shit is disturbing to say the least. So everybody watching, be prepared. Chelsea couldn't even watch this when I was watching the doc.
I first heard of this big place with the pretty sounding name because of a call I received from a member of the Willowbrook staff, a Dr. Michael Wilkins. The doctor invited me to see the conditions he was talking about, so unannounced and unexpected by the school administration, we toured building number 6. The doctor had warned me that it would be bad. It was horrible. There was one attendant for perhaps 50 severely and profoundly retarded children. Lying on the floor naked and smeared with their own feces, they were making a pitiful sound, a kind of mournful wail that it's impossible for me to forget. This is what it looked like, this is what it sounded like, but how can I tell you about the way it smelled? It smelled of filth, it smelled of disease, and it smelled of death. Perhaps Perhaps the governor can defend and explain away the budget cuts for the Department of Mental Hygiene, and perhaps Dr. Miller can explain and defend the filthy, dehumanizing conditions we found in this and other buildings, but they won't do it on this program. What we found and documented here is a disgrace to all of us. This place isn't a school, it's a dark corner where we throw children who aren't pretty to look at. It's the big town's leper colony.
We were sitting on both sides of him.
And he started to cry.
He started to cry.
And he said, "You see how it was? You see how it was? We were victims too." Meaning the attendants or the people that worked there. He just sat there and his eyes like rolled and he just started drooling in the hotel room.
We could see what was happening to him, and it's like you would kneel right in front of him and look right at him. Say it. Tell us the truth now. You know, God will forgive you. It was so close, we thought we had it. Then he just started to rock.
He was that way that whole night, the whole next day, and he didn't start talking to people until 2 or 3 days later.
That is beyond disturbing. For everyone listening that didn't see what we saw, if you've never seen the footage from Willowbrook, it is like disturbing beyond belief. You've never like understood how bad these institutions were at the time. It is completely disturbing, man. That one, you know, unfortunate woman with her bald head and the way.
Oh, dude.
It's like it's a horror movie. It's like a
it is.
horror movie.
It is, and like I'm not like trying to say it to make light of everything, but that shit scares me. It's like some of the freakiest looking shit.
It is.
And like it is genuinely. As I was like looking at it again, I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know, like this really feels like something that if you told me, oh, this is like something they made for like an old school horror movie, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'd believe it.
And for the, you know, to props to Geraldo Rivera, he did expose the Satanist stuff. I think when he ends up doing his career was, I think, a little, bro, like you're just buying into the religious persecution of people for thinking differently or whatever, with the satanic panic or whatever. People just be like, rock music is fucking turning our children into fucking Satanists. But like what he did expose, especially specifically with this insane asylum and what they did and how they kept their patients, was truly disturbing. It's something that sends chills down my spine, and it's not comfortable to watch this stuff.
Kind of crazy as well that it took 15 years after that point for that place to be closed down officially.
Which is wild. You have kids literally and these people are severely mentally ill. And who knows what they're doing. And then I've heard like staff members are touching and groping and raping them and doing absurd things to these children that are not even aware of their own surroundings, and then you're conditioning them more, not giving them help. So meanwhile, they're not understanding anything. So you leave them unhinged, naked, shitting themselves. And then they wonder why it smells so bad. But at the same time, right, the people that were hired there to do that job were not paid well enough. And there was, and this happens in other asylums, but specifically this one, they brought light to it, is they didn't have enough staff for the amount of mental patients that were there. So it caused this disturbing decay of the environment around these children, because people either weren't paid enough, they didn't have enough staff. So then people stopped caring. And then they just essentially left these children to die in their own filth. And it's sad.
Another observation of mine is, so they're saying that Rand was like severely mentally ill and had all these issues. So how did he get a job as a custodian in Willowbrook?
Because they're like, you're one of them.
It's just a very strange, like, because they try to make it out. They were like, oh, you know, Rand had access to children at a moment's notice and all this. And it's like, hold on a second, though. He didn't just show up one day and start giving himself a paycheck and like working there. Somebody somebody had to have interviewed him, or there had to be some sort of conversation for him to be like showing up for work.
Or was it that he was in the institution beforehand, because nobody talks about that shit, and then they gave him a job because they're like, you're mentally fit enough to be able to try to take care of these kids. And seeing some of the footage, if people have not seen it, if you want to see a real life horror movie, what was going on, and I'm telling you, before they had cameras in the 40s and 50s, this was happening, all over the world. And it's this is why things like eugenics gets brought up and stuff like that, because it is disturbing to see how we housed these mentally ill people, and there was no really care given. Parents that birthed some of these people with these mental deficiencies were then just give them away. Let the system deal with them. Let our tax dollars be put into housing these people without any real care, having minimal staff, and then people like they would hire anybody because most people don't want to do that job. So then you have somebody that's some sort of creep, like a Jimmy Savile, that would end up taking advantage of these mentally ill people and be like, and doing all sorts of disgusting things to children. And it's the disturbing truth that most people don't like to acknowledge.
So the tunnels beneath the institution were a creepy complex. Willowbrook State School itself may have seemed like a portal to hell for its inhabitants. Robert Kennedy referred to the institution as a snake pit, but the tunnels beneath the institution would go on to provide a whole new level of terror for the people of Staten Island. The Willowbrook tunnels are set as a hub with spokes that stretch beneath the grounds, and while in operation, the tunnels were used as a way for workers to move around quickly without physically moving through the hospital. In the film, they're described as a city under a city. The access tunnels were necessary while the hospital was up and running, but after it closed, many abandoned patients and former staff members allegedly moved into them below the surface of the institution.
Fucking frightening, man.
Speculated that Cropsey committed acts of Satanism in these tunnels.
I don't know about that, man. At this time, it's very easy to blame, like, Satanists are doing this. Satanists are the ones that are killing everybody and corrupting the youth or whatever. But it just seems like, they need a villain. They need a villain to make sense of maybe somebody that was far more intelligent than Andre Rand, that committed these acts that easily had access to them. Because if you were any intelligent person that preyed on children, I think it would be fairly easy to manipulate the situation to be able to access these kids.
Yeah, and it doesn't look good for the police department if you come out and say, look, we have no fucking clue. Whoever's doing this or whatever people are doing this are way ahead of us and like way smarter. And also, I think one of the lead detectives, he was getting ready to retire, and I think this was like his last big case. Of course. And there's a lot of speculation out there, and this has happened a lot of times, I think, throughout history with cases like this, where, it'll be a guy's last big break, or they're retiring or something like that, and they're like, okay, I want to close out this one, so let's just fucking, okay, Tom had issues with such and whatever, and we're just going to like make Tom the bad guy.
Well, that's what they do, right? And that's the idea of, like, you see this all throughout history, as you said. How many true crime cases have we covered and will cover in the future that has this exact same thing happen, where they need a villain, they need somebody to arrest the cops are lazy. And look at those dudes, like, whatever, like, I'm not going to talk to them. They're probably fucking in their 80s dying at this point, or 60s or whatever. But those dudes were overweight, unhealthy, just schlubs of detectives that just making every excuse they could throughout the documentary to be like, well, this is why he was the main suspect, the culprit of these. And how many serial killers have we talked about? How many will we talk about at the end of this that end up proving that cops do not care? Cops want to find somebody that they can label most times, other than some, but a lot of the detectives will just latch onto one story, and it might be even their own self-delusion, their own grandiose hubris that allows them to be able to do this stuff, to be like, no, this is him. I truly believe this. Look at all the information and the evidence I found to back this up. And then they're cement in their beliefs, and then all of a sudden that's the culprit and the suspect that they're arresting. Meanwhile, the guy had nothing to do with it. How many, I was going to say this when we were talking about, when I was researching this and when I was watching the documentary, I said to my wife, I was like, how many people have been sent to death row? 60 or whatever the number is, 40 to 60%. It's an absurd number, a percentage of people that are on death row that are innocent, man.
Yeah, and that's happening. People have been like freed after spending 20 years in prison falsely. Yeah.
I'm going to let you just take it away. I'll just give my points as we go through, but I know this stuff fascinates you, so I'll let you kind of break down this whole case.
I guess it's kind of to tie into what we've just been talking about. The idea of like, was Rand actually guilty, or is the real Cropsey still out there? Well, most of the citizens of Staten Island believe that Rand was a monster who nabbed and harmed numerous children. There's a lot of people who also believe that he was set up to take the fall. Not only is there no physical evidence tying him to Jennifer's case, but it's possible that someone else is responsible for her disappearance and passing. However, he was the last person seen with the girl, and he had a noted history of related charges. Some criminal scholars believe that Rand was simply the first person to be arrested, and that by bringing him in quickly, the police were able to provide closure for the families. It may be an unkind theory to the families of the missing children, but it's entirely possible that the real-life Cropsey is still wandering Staten Island.
And this is what I said too, like when I was watching this doc, I was like, they could have just like slapped the label on, oh, this guy's guilty, to this have some sort of closure or comfort for the people around this area, especially like, the Down syndrome girl that supposedly he took was this loving, caring she was just all around, like, just everyone loved her, and she just like was just kind of, and I've heard mother told the stories, and so did other people, that she was just an innocent youth, and then this also tried to, I don't know, slap this like label on this guy that is mentally ill, as he is the sole reason why she went missing, or why all these other people went missing. And I do believe they plagued on the idea, they plagued the citizens of Staten Island of, this guy looks like a murderer, so he might as well be a murderer. But what do we know about this shit, man? Look at Ted Bundy. All right, come on. Sexy Ted Bundy. Everyone wanted to fuck that guy. He's in the front of the courtroom, just swaying all the women, and the judge is like, I like this guy. He's pretty smart. He's got shit together. This guy knows how to be a lawyer. How the judge said to Ted Bundy, you could be a good lawyer. This is who the real fucking culprits and murderers usually are, is people that are far more intelligent than the justice system, and they seem to understand that. Right? So I find it very sad that this young girl was taken advantage of by somebody probably that wasn't Andre Rand. They just needed a boogeyman, like the big bad man in Russia, even though I don't think Vladimir Putin's a good guy, but that's an analogy, right? He's got to fucking slap the label on some villain.
Well, so there's been very little evidence in any of these cases since. There hasn't, in my opinion anyway, as far as I can tell, there hasn't really been anything overly concrete to say that it definitely was him. Now, my question would be, so they've said, okay, he suffered from mental illness, he was a weirdo, he was slow, he was an idiot, he was this, he was that, he was whatever. Now, if he's all those things, right, then how was he just like having episodes where he was like super genius, where he was able to like get rid of all the evidence, do everything, get rid of bodies, like do all that, and then go back to being like retarded?
I know, and they label him as that, as such, throughout the documentary, and it is true. Listen to me, that we've seen some of the most intellectual serial killers slip up off of the smallest thing, right? If he really did commit these murders with the intellect that they're claiming that he has, and being a disabled man, he would have left a trail of evidence. And that's what's absurd to me. Some of the most... Ted Bundy, just because I brought him up, he's probably smarter than everybody listening to this shit. I mean, not everybody, but the majority. That guy had a fucking an IQ out the fucking wazoo. The guy was smart based on what we think of as intellectual IQ, because I think that the IQ basis, is not really truthful because it's based on the repetitive schooling system. But we do know that Ted Bundy was smart. So was even Edmund Kemper. And the fact that people like that, man, if they have this intellectual capability to be able to manipulate the situation, even Dahmer, then you're saying that this guy has the capacity, which we'll get into next, to kidnap all of these kids without leaving a trail of evidence is
this is the thing. Like, and look, I'll play a little bit, I guess, of devil's advocate here and give a couple of like quick other points about him. So apparently his mother had spent time in an asylum when he was a teenager. Mm-hmm. He was born in Manhattan in 1944. Not much is known about his childhood, but his father died when he was only 14, and his mother then went on to spend some time in a mental institution. According to Rand's sister, who remained anonymous until she was agreed to be interviewed in the documentary, their mother had emotional problems, causing her to spend time in Pilgrim State Hospital in Brentwood, New York. Rand's sister also stated that neither she nor Rand were ever abused in any way, mentally, physically, emotionally, by either of their parents. Because I know a lot of people were like pushing that. He was also this is a little bit strange, some of this stuff. He was first arrested in 1969 for attacking a young girl. On May 25th, 1969, a then 25-year-old Rand was arrested for the kidnapping and attempted rape of a 9-year-old girl in the South Bronx. Police discovered Rand and the girl in his car, which was parked in a vacant lot. He was charged with an attempted rape, but eventually pled guilty to sexual abuse in 1970 in order to receive a lighter sentence. He served 16 months in prison before being paroled in 1972. Some speculate he may have been involved in the disappearance of another young girl shortly after his release in 1972.
Like I said this whole time, I'm not saying this guy didn't do it, but I'm saying he would be a very easy scapegoat to especially if he did do something like this, right? And there, I'm sure that he I don't know. I can't base it back on the fact that like they did catch him, at least we know, with somebody, but then.
So then, right, this gets a little bit weirder then. So what is it, like 11 years later? In January 9th, 1983, so what's that? Yeah, 11 years later, he picked up 11 kids in the school bus. The children were at the Staten Island YMCA when Rand appeared. Rather than returning them to their homes, he kidnapped them for 5 hours. He took them to get burgers at White Castle before driving them to Newark Airport to apparently watch planes land and depart the airport. He was charged with unlawful imprisonment, but only spent 10 months in prison since none of the children were harmed.
See, and that is bizarre. He had the opportunity to like kidnap a bunch of kids and drive them to God knows where. And realistically,
apparently, like,
you want to go look at the planes? Come on, get you a burger.
Apparently, he was like pretty casual about the whole thing. Like, he didn't seem like, from what I could like find out about it, he didn't seem like overly concerned about like what he had done. Like when the cops got him, he didn't seem to be like, I think they were like, dude, what the fuck, you just took 11 kids and just like disappeared with them, you can't do that. He was kind of like, well,
if you have the mental capability, the mental capacity of a child, and you were like, what would these kids love doing? Because I also think like a kid, they would love to get some burgers. White Castle, I've never had White Castle. From that movie, it sounds good, If a mentally ill, drooling man wanted to take me to White Castle and paid for my meal, I might go along with him.
Well, see, this is the other thing, right? Without trying to sound like stupid, or like
obviously
whatever.
I'm kidding, everybody.
But like, no, I'm talking about what I'm about to say. if I were for some reason to get a notion that I want to start abducting kids or like kidnapping kids or whatever, the last thing I would do is collect them in a school bus, bring them to a really popular fast food chain restaurant, and then bring them to a fucking airport. Because even in 1983, airports would have been like one of the more highly guarded places you could have went. So like
there would have been. It's not like after 9/11, but there's still tons of people there.
Well, yeah, what I'm saying
so
is
many
like,
people witnesses.
if you're gonna abduct kids, you're not gonna go to a super busy airport to be like, I want as many people as possible to see me.
In a very obvious big yellow school bus. Like your Miss Frizzle taking your kids. It's like, instead today, we're not going to go into the body of a lizard, or we're not going to become flowers. We're going to go get some burgers and get molested at an airport.
And you know what, right? It's really strange because both in the documentary, and I don't think it was a fault of Josh or Barbara who made the documentary. It was more the people, the detectives and stuff who were involved in the case, I think. Was more at fault. They just glossed over it though. They were like, "Oh yeah, he kidnapped 11 kids in 1983, and that was it." And I'm like, okay,
yeah, because during the doc, they didn't explain any of that shit.
Yeah, it's like, hold on though. You left out the part that he brought them to a fast food restaurant, and then he brought them to a fucking airport and didn't try to do anything.
No, he like realistically was like, you know what I like? I like burgers. And planes. Planes make me happy. I have the fucking mental capacity of a child. So I'm going to get... these kids, you know what they need? They've been at school all day. And in his mind, that's probably what they're thinking. Who knows, right? That I'm going to take them to go get some food, something that I enjoy eating, and then go watch planes. And if there was no evidence that he tried to touch or molest these kids, then how can you brush over that aspect of it? And you saw throughout the doc that all the witnesses that claimed that he was seen with what's her name, Jennifer, I think the Jennifer Schwigner, whatever, I'm not going to pronounce it properly, the Down syndrome little girl. It doesn't make sense, man, because like he had all of the opportunity to be able to do something to these people, and when you see the witnesses, they're all like, the way he looked. It's the way he looked like a scary guy. And the one chick that on the doc that was like, he was wearing a mask. I saw him with so and so and her, and he was wearing a mask. And it's like, how do you know it was him if he was wearing a mask? How do you know for sure that it was him? I don't know, and everything seems contradictory, and when you see the eyewitness testimonies of these people that are outside the court or whatever, they all seem to be like, he looked scary. It's probably him. Yeah, he looked like a scary guy.
I think there is a lot of that, and like, look, maybe back in that era, if both of us had have been in that area, we might have been susceptible to it.
I would have been. I'd be like, the pitchforks.
The idea of...
is happening.
Everybody's jumping on that story, and maybe you kind of get caught up in it as well and say the same thing and kind of go along with it. Be like, oh yeah, I also think I saw him on that corner that day, and I definitely saw him in a car, and I saw him drag someone off the street.
What do we know from true crime cases, right? Especially ones with, I eventually want to do an episode, and I had it written out at some point about convictions, wrongly convicted people. There's a lot to that if you actually look into it, that so many people throughout history and throughout certain crime cases were wrongly convicted, some even sentenced to death based on eyewitness reports that were fraudulent. I always bring up the story that I learned in law class of this guy was on vacation with his wife in Florida. Someone ran up and shot his wife in the head, a black man, and she took her purse, and then the cops picked the husband up, and he was frantic, and they're like, can you point the guy out, da-da-da, and he saw the very first black kid that he saw, and then pointed at him and was like, he's the murderer. He killed my wife. Come to find out, this was a 16-year-old boy that just had enough money to go get some candy from the corner store, and he was almost sentenced to death. Luckily, I think he got out, but this has happened before. There's an infamous case of a black boy being convicted of raping a white woman, and then he was one of the youngest people to be fried alive. He got killed, he was executed in the frying chair. wheelchair. This young boy that they all claim that he raped some white women. Wasn't true. And this happens so many, especially to, which is sad, to black people throughout history, especially black males, that were convicted of stuff they never did just because a guy was like, that's him. Even though your memory is foggy, it's so quick that you can never trust eyewitnesses. I'm telling you that right now. Their memories become skewed. If you study law, it's very true.
And also, if you look at any interrogation footage for any extended period of time, sometimes without maybe, and there's even times I think where police don't even realize they're doing it, but they're nearly coercing you into a narrative. So like
they
they'll
know
be
what
like,
they're doing, man.
It's like, oh, you seen him? Did you see him with a mask? And the person's like, yeah, they had a mask. Yeah. Did you see him in like a black Jeep? Yeah, it was a black Jeep. Yeah.
Look at Brandon Dassey, man. Yeah. The fact they're like, you like wrestling? Oh yeah. I love Kane and the Undertaker. It's like, little Aaron sitting in that
and there you go, right? And he, like, obviously he was mentally challenged. Even Stephen Avery, I don't know where people sit on whether Stephen Avery was guilty or not, but that entire family were all like mentally challenged in some way.
They were. And then for him to be like, did you see him burn her body? Teresa Hallbuck. Did you see him do it? Yeah. And eventually I think it would be probably worth it to cover it on this show because I do find it fascinating because there's these weird indiscrepancies and cops do this where they're like, he's our man. Look how many people they like. Is very soon we're going to be covering the co-ed killer, Edmund Kemper. But I want to make sure, I want to get a bunch of clips. I want to do this justice. But he was cool with the cops. They all thought he was cool. They didn't realize it was fucking him for how long. And this guy's like hanging around with them, being like, it's old Eddie being a weirdo. And then meanwhile, he was the culprit of all these murders that they were investigating. And he was staying right beside them, swigging a beer with them.
Another super charismatic, intelligent person, and it kind of ties into something else that I had found. And again, like, you have to take all this stuff at face value. It's all secondhand information and hearsay. Yeah. But so apparently, according to some of the people that Rand was housed with in prison, he had bragged about his similarities to serial killer Ted Bundy. Rand had apparently claimed to have said, me and Ted are alike in many ways. We both used Volkswagens. Bundy's thing was women. My thing is kids. Do you think the police could figure that out? Rand's defense attorney, Dwayne Felton, later described these statements as nothing more than pretentious prison boasting on his client's behalf.
But they always do that.
It's strange that his attorney, though, didn't say, oh, that's like lies. He didn't say any of that. It's weird that he said, no, he did say it, but it's just like, he was boasting to other inmates.
How do we know if that's true? You could be like, Jerry, in the cell next over, be like, yo, we'll give you 5 cartons of cigarettes if you say that this is what he was saying.
So here's something that's happened that I can't remember the exact case I'm thinking of right now in my head, but there has been situations where they have pulled, like, fellow inmates and whatever out. And they've been told, you'll get a reduced sentence if this is the story.
100%.
Did he, or they mightn't even tell him, like, you've got to say this, but they might say, he told you that he murdered those kids, didn't he? And then the dude will go, yeah. And then they'll say, okay, well, if you testify in court, you'll get 15 years knocked off your sentence.
And
anybody's going to take that.
100%. And the thing is, Kay, let's get conspiracy minded when it comes to this, Kay. If you had something, a true crime event, something that happened, I don't know, maybe recently, like the Robert Picton thing, because he has like day parole or whatever, right? The guy from Vancouver that murdered, hookers, fed them to his pigs. Meanwhile, it's really weird that Nickelback played there, and then Trudeau has a connection to that and going to hang out at that farm, and the RCMP seem to have covered it up. So then you do this thing where you need to, even if you had some case that some maybe important people were involved, Jeffrey Epstein type stuff, and then you need a fall guy, you need a victim, you need an Oswald, you need someone to take the fall for something that the CIA or the FBI or some of these organizations and three-letter agencies have done. So you need to convince people that this is your man. And the thing is that people have to clue into, and this is why I like covering a lot of these episodes, is because psychology is a very important issue when it comes to these episodes and how the human brain works. Now you can convince them. You know what? Like, realistically, the Ted Bundy case, as we brought up many times, he played his own lawyer. He was literally convincing people that he was justified in his actions. And throughout the court case, there was people that believed he was like innocent just based on his charismatic, intelligent responses to a lot of the stuff that they were presenting in the court system. And then the fact that they even let him do that is wild. But I just want to get that point across is, remember, psychologically, they can manipulate people to believe whatever they want. And if the cops just want to end the case and they're getting a bonus, we'll give you a bonus based on this. If you close this case, we have, 105 cases that are still open. If you close 5 of them by the end of this year, we will give you a bonus. And I'm sure this stuff happens all the time. Okay, and that's why you have cops that leave. They want obedient, dumb fucks to be cops in a lot of the cases. There's David Icke talked about this recently. They want narcissistic psychopaths to be cops because they low IQ people that just don't give a shit and will follow what they're told.
And also, you have to remember as well, they've been able to manipulate and brainwash pretty intelligent people. So it would be, if they can do it to your like everyday, like, average intelligence or higher intelligence person, they can do it to somebody who's, suffering from some sort of like mental illness or is a little bit slow or whatever. He was, so apparently, like, this kind of ties into another thing that you said. Eyewitness testimonies said that he was seen holding hands with Jennifer the day she disappeared. However, the jury was unable to reach a verdict on a first-degree murder charge due to lack of evidence. They did, however, find him guilty of kidnapping and unlawful imprisonment, which earned him 25 years to life. He was sentenced in 1989 and would have been eligible for parole in 2008 had he not been charged for another kidnapping decades later. In 2002, kidnapping charges were brought against him in relation to the 1981 disappearance of another young girl, Holly Ann Hughes, who was a 7-year-old Staten Island resident who had been last seen purchasing a bar of soap at a local store on July 15th. Although witnesses had seen Rand's Volkswagen driving around the area, there hadn't been enough evidence to charge Rand with kidnapping Hughes, whose body was never found. Police reinvestigated the case in 1998 and eventually found enough evidence to charge him, and he was found guilty of kidnapping her and was sentenced to another 25 years to life in 2004. He would have been 93 years old when he's eligible for parole in 2037.
Well, he'll be dead by then.
And it's just like, it just seems a bit like it's a bit of a reach, like, and I think it has a lot to do with what you said, where it's like, we need to close this and we need to find this, like, so-called boogeyman. So, like, the community and everybody believes in the police again, and, we clear all this up and we'll just, like, forget about it. And especially, I think when there's you've got 5-6 disappearances altogether, and they probably can't figure any of them out. They don't know if they're related. They don't know if it's multiple people. They don't know. So it's like, okay, let's just find one person and blame all of them on him. And that clears up all the cases. So, like, they've closed, 5-6 cases all in one go.
And it is sad, too, to do with, like, because that's all, they've done this before many times, where they want to find a specific suspect or culprit for these murders and connect it, because especially at the time when serial killers were hot, so to speak, and there were serial killers all over the United States, and then you start to look into, I don't know, maybe the people that were involved that you wouldn't like to be involved, people within your community. I'm very skeptical about what we were being told about certain true crime cases, just because I've dug a lot into the idea of that they're used for some sort of ritualistic murder, and that goes into the very dark conspiracy aspect of this, but they just need a face to convince the public that this is the person that you need to hold contempt for, and that we need to stay, that needs to be locked up. Meanwhile, the dude is, say, some rich aristocrat dude that is important in the community that is doing this, right? Like, the thing is, this guy is like the easiest guy you can blame to do this shit. Oh, some creepy guy that also worked there that is mentally handicapped, and they've just here, we'll give him some of these drugs. You have to take these drugs, and the perp walk that they had with him is fucking bizarre. He's like drooling and mentally fucking. You can't even think. Like, you can't even look at. He's in that cop car. That footage of when he's in the cop car, and he's just like slumped over. Like they have to like walk him, and he's like, I don't know. It seems like they put that he's on something. They gave him medication.
It's like so. Hindsight, they keep saying like, oh, we always knew he was a bit of a weirdo, and we always knew that he'd done this and he'd done that, and he was always a creep and blah, blah, blah. All the community seemed to know, and all the police knew. And I'm like, okay, so if that's the case, then if everyone was so sure that this guy was such a big danger, why was he allowed to live in like campsites out on like the old mental hospital grounds and be free going around? He's also a suspect in at least 3 other missing person cases. There are 3 other unsolved cases that Andre Rand is believed to be involved in. The first occurred in 1972 when 5-year-old Alice Pereira went missing from her Staten Island apartment building southeast of Willowbrook. Rand had just been released from prison and was working as a painter in the apartment building when Pereira disappeared. Though Rand was questioned by police, he was released due to lack of evidence. On August 14th, 1983, 10-year-old Tahisi Jackson went missing after leaving the Mariners Harbor Motel on Staten Island. 12 days earlier, Rand had been released from prison after completing his sentence for the school bus kidnapping. As with Alice, Rand was questioned by authorities again, but there was also not enough evidence to press any charges. The third case in which Rand was a suspect was that of Hank Gafforo.
Sure.
Hank was a mentally disabled 22-year-old man who was last seen apparently with Rand by eyewitnesses. The two apparently were seen eating in a diner together in 1984, and Hank was never seen again.
Maybe they were just friends, man. Maybe he had nothing to do with his disappearance, and they were just friends. I'm not fucking. This guy could 100% be some sort of murderous maniac that is unhinged and doesn't have the mental capacity to. But then I'm always like, where do the bodies go then? He can't be that smart to be like.
That's what I'm saying. Like, unless the only other option here is he is the smartest serial killer we have ever come across.
You know what it's like? You know, Scary Movie. Mm-hmm. Everyone think Officer Doofy, and then at the end he's like the fucking genius. He like rips off the fucking mustache, and then he gets into that fucking hot sports car, and he starts driving away. And like Officer Doofy reporting for duty, and then like everyone thinks that he's some sort of retard. Sorry for the, but that at this time, that's what they. It was retardation is how they claimed it. But even in that movie, they joked about that you know Dewey's a retard or Doofy, and then. He gets away with it at the end, so I don't fucking know. It'd be very funny if that's not funny, but bizarre if that was the way it was set up. But then you start to see all these aspects too of the homeless problem around this area and the Satanist shit, which they always want to bring up too. It's very funny where they're always like, you know, a Satanist going in there and summoning Lucifer, and you know. But I can't trust that this is accurate information. And anyway, about this whole situation, it all seems like they needed somebody to play the victim, essentially the fall guy. And you know, the easiest one to do is that we just hop this guy on that already looks like a creepy pedophile, and we just make him drool in front of the court and show everyone this depiction of this horrible, mentally ill man. And it definitely seems like that's what they were trying to do.
Yeah. Now there's other things, like he didn't really help himself. On Mother's Day 2011, he sent an unsettling handwritten note to a local newspaper. In the letter, the then 67-year-old Rand wished all the ladies on Staten Island who supported prosecution vindictiveness.
Persecution vindictiveness? Weird. That's
against an innocent person. He wished all the ladies on Staten Island who supported persecution, vindictiveness against an innocent person, a happy Mother's Day. He went on to say that if he could afford to, he would give them seeds to plant rose bushes in honor of his forgiveness. He also talked about the Spirit of God that had guided him on his entire life's path.
How must I gonna say a different type of seed? Like he's some fucking Jeffrey Epstein shit. It's just like, you know what? I'll give you my seed if you want to spread it around the earth. Like, it's so weird. Well, and if he's doing, he's not mentally stable. He was like, the vindictiveness. So essentially, it's what he's claiming, and I'm like, so they're saying he has this horrible. He's not smart. He is he's mentally handicapped, right? But then he's using words like the persecution, like vindictiveness, where essentially is like that you're being persecuted. Because of some vindictive, you know what I mean? Like that somebody's angry about you, and they believe that you are the sole, you're the villain in this situation. You are the sole perpetrator.
Yeah, and everybody's just
crimes.
like jumps on the bandwagon.
And then for you to use that type of terminology when you didn't have that. When you're not that intelligent to begin with, seems like you could have the cops write this shit and coerce him to do it.
This is the thing, though, right? So there's a couple of things here, right? So either we're completely like this is all a ruse, and this dude is one of the most clever, which would be a crazy plot twist, or that thing was written. And the cops are like, here, sign that or write this or whatever, because you don't know. Like he like obviously if mentally ill children were being abused in the way they were in Willowbrook, there's nothing to say when he was in prison that he wasn't being fucking tortured and like all sorts of crazy shit. Also, I'm fairly sure anybody could have written that note. The newspaper could have made up the fucking note to sell papers.
Yeah, I know, 100% sensationalism. Sensationalism.
Like,
That's a
I could
big
say
thing,
that
man.
right now. Like I could say, oh, me and Tom, we got a letter from fucking Andre Rand because he heard the podcast, and here's what he said. He said he committed all the murders and he done it. Ha ha ha. He's a genius.
Yeah.
And then have no proof or no source or no anything. You just get to just say it, and then that's it.
I know, and that's what everything that we've seen throughout true crime cases can be manipulated. Even the way that, like we talked about Berkowitz earlier, a guy thinks he's like a Christian and shit now. He's like, I fucking repented to all my sins to Jesus Christ. And so, like, these people can be swayed and manipulated, and I do believe if they wanted to convey a guilt with Andre Rand and really convince the public that after all these years, after all these questions, that he was the one that was the sole perpetrator of these crimes and the people that are missing, it would be easy to sway the public opinion by writing a letter. And this is why you start to, if I start to question stuff like the idea that a lot of serial killers were involved in cults. And eventually we haven't even gotten to like Gary Ridgway and like some of the people that we'll eventually dive into on the show that I'm like, we're just kind of brushing the surface. There's going to be some of the more infamous killers coming up, and I would like to do with you and Billy at some point very soon. There's two specific ones that we already mentioned. But just because it'd be a fascinating take to see us break it down. Billy with this comedic relief and then us really analyzing it, from the outside in, because I don't trust either the information that we're being displayed because it could be manipulated. The cops could be saying one thing or another. You could have a seasoned cop being like, this is exactly how it went. I was there. He's a grizzled guy with his cigarette. And he's like, it seems all accurate, but then he's also being paid to say this to make sure that it's convicted because they actually know who the killer really is. You don't fucking know.
This is the thing. I guess to kind of touch on like the tail end of the story.
Yeah.
There was there's a little bit at the end of the documentary and stuff. I feel like they don't focus on it a huge amount, but they definitely mention it just because I think it is another important aspect of the story that's been brought up a lot.
The Staten Island dumping ground. We're gonna get to that. Just like
about the whole like just that whole idea of like the satanic cult thing. And there's one big theory there, and actually I had seen I looked up a couple of different things. So the guy that made this, Josh Zeman, he's done a lot of AMAs on Reddit and stuff like that, where people ask him questions and different things like that. Not just about Cropsey, about all his other documentaries and stuff that he's made as well. But there was a guy I found on there who said that he had went to one of the like premieres of Cropsey back in 2008 or whenever it was, at some film festival, and he watched it with Barbara and Josh, and afterwards he was able to talk to them like about the movie or whatever, and he said that he noted at the time there's a part where that there's a detective in it, right? And he's like super chirpy throughout the whole thing, and he's kind of jokey and smiley about everything, and seems quite sure of like everything he's saying. And then they ask him about the devil worship and stuff like that in Willowbrook and those areas, and instantly, and I don't know, look, maybe it's just something he was like, I don't know, doing as a fucking gimmick or something, but instantly his whole demeanor changes. And someone who was previously throughout the whole documentary answering every question with some form of like happiness, like he seemed happy to be able to answer all these questions about the case. As soon as they started asking him about like the satanic shit and devil worship and like groups getting together in the woods, he instantly goes, I don't want to talk about that.
Well, if you think about it, because I was just going to talk about the whole building and how it is very creepy and the energy that would be housed there. And like realistically, right? We know that Satan worshipers and people that do worship Satan and want to call on people like Baal or Baphomet do actually go. This is actually kind of worked out perfectly. I'm wearing my. It looks like I have devil horns right now. But they do use these sites of turmoil, places that have residency of pain and horrible things happen there to gain energy. Because you think about it, when I was watching the doc, and then when I skipped through some of the stuff because I remembered the doc, but when they're going through the building, and it would be so creepy, I'm sure. Bring out a Ouija board or like a spirit box, the energy there would be spooky. But the thing is, if it already was a place where people, and they send mentally handicapped kids to go and die, and if you went there and you were a Satan worshiper and you did want to invoke demons, you would make it 1,000 times worse. You would if you were invoking some sort of dark force that existed and maybe fed off the energy there, because for sure, I believe that there is very dark entities that exist outside of our eyesight that fuel off this energy of negativity and chaos and sexual energy and repression and all sorts of shit. And I do think they use us as some sort of food source. And if you were to invoke some sort of demonic entity to come out in these certain places, you would curse that land and that structure forever. And I do think that is a possibility that there was some, even kids, man, even Satan worshipers that are kids that think it's fucking cool to do this shit, and they go and then they can invoke something that could never be reversed,
Yeah, for sure. And I think as well, there was a particular mention of, is it the, what are they called? Is it the Process Church?
Yeah. I think that's who Gary Ridgway is connected to.
And it wasn't fucking Thingy, Son of Sam dudes involved in that, and they had the New York branch of the Process Church or whatever had that offshoot thing, the Children or whatever it was. That separate culty thing.
Not Children of God. That has nothing to do with the Process.
There's a lot of mention, and I don't know whether it's just rumors or people just try and tie the two together, but there was a lot of mention of that sort of stuff. And this guy on Reddit, now again, this could be all bullshit on Reddit, but the guy was after the screening, I got the chance to talk to the couple who made the movie and whatever, and he was like, I had it in my mind, in particular, that scene where the detective seems to just change his entire demeanor when he's asked about the Process Church and stuff like that. He was like, I just found it really jarring that all of a sudden he went from really enjoying answering everything to like, no, we're not going to talk about that. We're just going to leave that one. So let's just like
Well, it's 'cause
forget
they-
about that.
It's funny how a lot of the occult aspects of things cops don't want to talk about, especially certain detectives that maybe stumbled upon things. Then you're like, oh, this judge is part of this cult. Oh, my police chief seems to make frequent visits to these cults, the occult practices or places that take place. You would be surprised, like what do we know, man? What do we know about what Richard Ramirez said, man? David Icke talks about this shit. Richard Ramirez, when he was in his holding cell and he was in jail, he talked about how Satanists are not just some kids in a backyard or going to a graveyard sacrificing goats. That is a part of it. In the movie Spawn, when they see those kids like try to sacrifice that skull and they're like fucking rejects. There's people that definitely do that stuff, but we do know that what Richard Ramirez said was it's judges, it's politicians, it's people within power. And now that I've gone down this crazy rabbit hole of all the stuff that I've been reading and researching, it is your people in power, your governments are Satanists. That's true. You may not believe it. A guy was arrested for fucking destroying a satanic whatever it was that statue, that satanic statue in Oregon or wherever it was, and the guy was a Christian veteran and saw that in one of the Capitol buildings, one of the Congress, like a government building, and destroyed it, and he's being arrested for like hate crime stuff. But then you can have all these communistic youth that have been brainwashed by Karl Marx, the guy that believed he was possessed by a fucking demon, tearing down statues of people they believed were slave owners, and they may have been, or people that were colonizers. But then it's like, that shit always drives me crazy too, because the idea of like, oh, these people that you claim colonized this or did that, you live in that country. You're part of it. The reason that you have a fucking cell phone and why you were able to go to work and have a job and have a house is because some of these people that create the society that you exist in. So it blows my mind, because I don't think people understand that a lot of the people in politics and in controlling your governments are Satanists that are like that fucking guy, those dudes that fucked each other in the Congress building in the United States. And guess what? They're being let free.
And so much so, actually, that I think when this guy, he approached the filmmakers and asked them about this, they said, it's funny actually, because they were like, we noticed that also, that like nobody, within the police department wanted to talk about it. Yeah. So much so that apparently their follow-up project was going to be like a deep dive, similar kind of a documentary about the Process Church and like the goings on in Staten Island, apparently. Oh yeah. And they started like they were in like pre-production stage where they were like doing, like early stage interviews and things like that, and seeing who they could get to talk to and records and stuff like that. And apparently the Josh guy who made it said that things got like really weird. Everyone got overly aggressive with them, and a lot of people wouldn't talk to them anymore. And he was like, rather than push the boat, we just kind of put the project on the shelf and moved on to something else.
Doesn't that seem like something is actually going on? Like I've said on previous episodes, is that if you're not allowed to talk about it, it's probably something that you should talk about. Because if somebody is trying to withhold information and put barriers up on certain information that we're not supposed to know, even things like the idea of like, and I'll get into this just a little bit, is the idea of like Mein Kampf, that we're not supposed to read this book that was one of the most influential books over an entire country and society and people as a whole during a time in history. And the thing is, if you're not allowed to look at history and analyze it, then there's some benefit that the establishment is coercing the public into believing. There's some benefit of them conditioning you to believe in some of these things. And I'm not saying the fucking Nazis were right. Fuck the Nazis. Fuck Zionists. Fuck everybody that is about power and greed, and conforming people into what their ideology of what they think a person should be. Human beings should be inherently free. But that idea of like, if there is something you shouldn't question, If they're telling you not to look at something, you probably should look there. Because eventually, like I've told you, I want to like dive into a lot of these. We've been kind of backpedaling a bit. We've talked about the progression of these serial killers throughout history. Right, me and Billy talked about H.H. Holmes. Me and you talked about the Toy Box Killer, and even some of these older serial killers that existed throughout history before it kind of ramped up in the 70s and 80s. And my plan is to eventually cover these, and then I do want to analyze. I want to cover Charles Manson, but then after, at some point, I want to cover, was he manipulated by the CIA? Were there connections to occultism and organizations within the government that were persuading serial killers to commit acts of atrocity and kill people for all sorts of absurd reasons and to pump up fear? You gotta keep people in fear to manipulate them, right? So
for you then, I guess, to tie it back into the story then, because I see multiple potential outcomes. So either what we've kind of lightly touched on throughout this episode, that this guy was some kind of genius and completely pulled the wool over everybody's eyes, or he was just like a fall guy that just found him and it was just an easy target, and the cops just genuinely wanted to clear the case up, and it was like, yeah, just fucking nail him. We need him off the streets anyway. He's done some creepy shit before. It's fine. He's a scumbag. Let's just get rid of him. Or did the cops not know that somebody else had done it and used him? Or did they have no fucking idea who done it, so they just had to find somebody? Or was he involved? Like, there's a lot of stories of people saying that, he was supposedly not taking part in like these satanic ritual things and all, but he was like being used to like take these kids off the street and like bring them to these rituals and stuff. And then when people started to mention about stuff going on in the woods, the higher ups, like, I don't know, like you said, like maybe it's the local judges, maybe it's the police chief, say like, look, we've got to make a move on him and make it all seem like it's his fault, and hush about this talk about cults and rituals and stuff. It's just really weird that all the detectives don't want to talk about that at all. It's kind of strange. Like, it seems like they got some sort of a memo or something about like, we won't be talking about what's up with that. Or was it just someone completely different? Like, apparently, they talk a lot about in this story, oh, well, Rand lived in the tunnels below Willowbrook.
Yeah.
They also failed to mention that there was a shit ton of other homeless people and stuff and mentally ill people that also lived in those tunnels.
Yeah. So,
I mean, could someone else have done it? Or was it a group of them and he was involved in some way? Do you know what I mean? Like, that it wasn't just solely all on him?
Yeah, there's so many different avenues that could be pursued when it comes to the story of what actually happened. To me, from all the research and the things that I've been reading into over the last fucking how many years of looking deep into this stuff that I am interested by, it definitely seems like it's kind of the latter. Like, it's more nefarious than you'll ever understand. The fact that they focus on a couple of kids when thousands of kids go missing, even I'm sure in Staten Island, hundreds of kids go missing, especially around this time. And then they only focus on a couple to bring attention to it. And the media sells that story and then convince you, like, the idea, right? Like, just to bring some of this aspect of this stuff up. People, if you don't understand, the people that are involved with creating the Amber Alert system, that was Ghislaine Maxwell's sister. Her sister. That is factual. That is true. And Mossad and a lot of these places have, their fingers in all this shit. But the thing is, so if they convince the public that, okay, these 5 children have went missing, we're going to bring attention to these kids, but we're going to hush some of the other ones. To me, after all the evidence that we've talked about and the stories that have been corroborated through people claiming to see this or that and seeming to just base it based on his look, I don't know. It kind of does seem like that he may have been used. Like maybe crazy Eileen Warner's, and maybe she's right, man. Maybe that they were using him and people like her to acquire these kids. Like, Jimmy Savile or Epstein is like the tip of the iceberg. They use a certain person to acquire stuff, and then when they have a fall guy, Even like
Exactly, because
you know
then
what I
when
mean?
shit hits the fan, it's a really easy target to go, look at this creepy scumbag. It's obviously all his fault.
The thing is, he can have been involved with taking 3, 4 children to these cults or something like the Process Church, and then there is like maybe 50, I don't know, 20. There's a bunch of kids that already went missing, but he's involved in 2 or 3. They have him, and they do the thing. You have intelligent people that orchestrate a lot of this stuff, and to me, based on his intelligence level and what we've seen in the video footage of him, and I don't know, it definitely seems like he was manipulated and coerced to do some of this stuff. And we know that they do use homeless people to do some of this shit. And eventually, at some point, I have an episode that would be fun to talk about. And it's about how rich people take homeless people off the street and hunt them down in some sort of like The Hunt. We'll have to actually incorporate it with that movie because this stuff happens all the time. So I just wanted to make it, I wanted to really point a direction of, we know that there's people in power that orchestrate this stuff and that manipulate people to, all they need is an excuse. They need a fall guy. They need someone to be able to pull off some of these horrible crimes. And who knows? I could be totally wrong. It could be like this guy's the fucking villain and he is the perpetrator of all these missing children and it was his fault. But the evidence and my lie detector, my things going off being like, this is way deeper than most people would ever want to acknowledge.
Yeah, I would think so. And the unfortunate part about it is we'll probably never truly know.
No.
I will say like one last thing, I suppose, before, because I'm not really sure where I sit on the whole thing. I feel like I'm on the fence because it's very hard to pinpoint exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
There is, like, if you look at some of the facts, I guess, of the case, there is a lot of like weird coincidental stuff where like he does seem to be around an awful lot. You know, it's like he was seen having food with that 22-year-old guy who went missing. He was seen holding hands with a Down syndrome girl. I know. You know, he was seen somewhere else with somebody else. He was working as a painter in the apartment block where the little girl disappeared. Yeah. I'm like, it is a bit strange that like he happened to be around. But again, you don't know whether like, is that all factual? Because like if you just tell the community that's going to spread like wildfire. It's like Chinese whispers.
Dude, especially within this time period, and I don't know, it does make sense that you could just tell somebody a story, especially I'm just saying, especially like the witnesses and what they claim. They have no evidence. They just say that they think that they saw him. That's
the strange part, that there was literally not even one piece of evidence. That's the part I can't understand. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and this is why I do think that it goes deeper than we could imagine, and they create these legends. And think about it, they use this against us all the time. They can manipulate our minds. PsyOps, psychological warfares are happening right now as we speak, all the time, and to manipulate and sway public opinion. And like the crime minister recently, right? It's like he talked on some sort of podcast unhingingly, and this guy's unhinged maniac narcissist, and he's like, I miss the days where we just had CBC and these news channels and everyone got their facts. And he's like, he literally said there was an agreed upon fact based on the news, So especially at this time, you just have to, especially when they realize that they could use TV and newspapers to manipulate people, all you have to broadcast is mentally disabled man arrested with connections to children missing, and then everyone's like, that guy looks fucking scary, man. He definitely did it. Not realizing that there's people in your community that could have done it. Look at fucking John Wayne Gacy, man. I would love to talk about him at some point. That guy was a pillar of the community, connected to Freemasons, all sorts of weird shit, man. And people viewed him as this great guy that helped everybody else, helped everybody dress up like clowns, going to community events. Meanwhile, the guy had 40 bodies in his basement. Scary
bastard.
That guy's one of the scariest serial killers, I think, honestly. I could hang out with Richie. I can convince Richie Ramirez to be my friend. Even
I still want a Richard Ramirez t-shirt.
Yeah,
And
we're
I know
gonna.
people will probably want to like kill me for that, but
I'll wear mine. He's gonna be covered soon. We'll bring this to a close. I thought this was something that was very interesting, and I know that you were fascinated by this case.
yeah,
But at the same time, like, if the fans don't know me by now, I've been going down a rabbit hole. I've been deep inside this stuff. So, and the more I read, because all I've been doing is reading and reading and reading and reading it, and I've been buying a bunch of different books and stuff like that I'm going to be diving into, is the more that I'm convinced that on the surface level, we only know a fraction of the truth. So, like, even with this case, I bet you what we know is like an iceberg, that we only see the tip, but we don't understand the levels that go beyond that. And I think that's to do with a lot of the cases and the true crime cases that we see. And you know that people are fascinated by true crime, so you give them a specific set of facts, you know, and then I don't know, it just seems fucking sketchy. That's all I'm saying. I don't believe what they're telling us about this case, and the fact that it is shrouded in so much mystery and urban legend seems a little weird.
yeah, it is. I really don't know where. I wish I was able to give more like definitive like answer of where I sit, but I genuinely don't know, and I think it is, like you said, it's way deeper than we probably know. And I think even the people who made it, I think, realized like they could only get so far.
Yeah. They did a good job.
Like,
the doc's
everybody just blocked them out at a certain point.
The doc is well done, and I think it's a creepy doc they threw together, and at the time especially, it was something that intrigued audiences. And as there was definitely points within the doc that they pointed at that we don't even necessarily know the truth, and they could have they needed a fall guy. And I just want to bring that up numerous times and really push that into people's heads, is that they can convince you that the nicest guy in the world is a serial killer. Yeah. Is a murderous scumbag, right? Look at, just to bring up, just because I've interviewed people on the show just about the Freedom Convoy and stuff that's happened throughout our Canadian history the last couple of years, or the world, is that they convinced a population that people that chose not to get some sort of experimental shot were some sort of right-wing fascist Nazis, and even CSIS, which is CSIS is not a good thing. It's like an organization in Canada that I could look. I can't remember the exact definition of what CSIS is, but they came out recently and said. Let me look at what CSIS. So it's Canadian Security Intelligence Service. So CSIS is like what the CIA is for America, and so they labeled people, the parental groups that are against the LGBT, the cult stuff, the gender ideologies being taught in school. They labeled them as far-right Nazis, neo-Nazis, parental groups, parents that just wanted to protect their kids against being sexualized by the UN agenda. So I just want to make it clear to people that these organizations, the RCMP, the police that you have in Ireland, these people are paid, and they will give you whatever evidence. They'll plant evidence on people. Look at the Coots border, fucking planting guns on Canadian citizens to say they were. So come on. Why would you believe these people? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's wild, like, and it's so hard. Like, well, we've had this conversation several times about, like, it's gotten to the point where it's impossible to know what to believe, and I don't know now if, like, when I'm being told the real truth is just like another like version of lies. I know. So I feed it to distract me from what's actually going on. So it's like there's so many layers to everything now. It's like, how can we ever figure out anything?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, everybody that listens to this and is a fan of the show, I appreciate your skepticism, and all for the fans, really, like, all I ask is for you to question things. That's all I'm asking for. Even the time this comes out, our the Khazarian Mafia episode will be out, in the whole full 3 hours that we dissected a very interesting, version of history that we may not know is factual. And the whole time, me and Aaron were both like, I don't know if this is fucking real. I don't know. Yeah. I'm just questioning stuff. That's all I'm doing, right? So at the end of the day, I just want people to, especially our audience, is to just question everything. And we're never, ever coming at something with malicious intent. We make some dark humor jokes, but I do believe most of our audience really does understand what we're going for and how we're just being genuine more than everybody else. Because a lot of other people have agendas and they all have something that they're trying to persuade to people. And all I'm doing is being like, I don't know. Anything is possible.
Yeah, same.
You know? So everybody, this was a lot of fun. I thought we did something a little different when it comes to how we analyze the whole case of this, because it is something that's very, it's in the psyche, especially around America and stuff like that. Even that, this case, it's very much, it's a legend. It is like some sort of urban legend. You know, how we know of the hook-handed man giving abortions out for free, stuff like that, Just kidding.
The documentary definitely brought it to light even more.
Yeah,
it's such a
I agree.
popular documentary. For anybody who hasn't seen it, it is available. Yeah, it's on YouTube now, and like it's on multiple
Tubi probably.
Yeah, and it's on multiple high-profile YouTube channels. Like I think there's like 5 or 6 like proper HD uploads of it, the full thing. It's definitely worth looking at, and it's strange because it's obviously a true story, but they've kind of done the narrative in a really strange way, where like it sort of feels like you're looking at something like the Blair Witch, but then it's like, oh no, this is actually real.
I know. That's why it's funny even hearing about this. They have definitely the folklore and legend surrounding it. It seems like it's not real, but this is more real than people understand of what it's connected to. And I do think, is that true? Like when we did the commentary on urban legends, you can find it on the Patreon, and stuff like that, is like how much of that is true, right? Because are these based on real stories that then you get like telephone game, get passed around, and then eventually it becomes some fable, some story, some legend that is actually shrouded in some truth, right? So, I enjoyed myself. We have a lot of big stuff coming. This was actually Aaron's idea to dive into this. Sometimes it's so funny that I have all these ideas of episodes we're going to get into, but if all of a sudden something pops up and we're like, okay, let's cover this. Let's just get into it. Let's do something different. Let's do something we haven't even researched recently. So I watched the doc. I started looking into stuff, but I have 1,000,001 ideas for this show. There's going to be a lot of stuff coming. I do think at some point it would be fun to do like that movie, something about wellness. Mia Goth is in our favorite, and that other guy, Cures to Wellness or whatever. There's some stuff. There's some certain movies based on asylums and stuff that we could end up getting into on Class Horrorcast. But we're number one. We're gonna be number one Irish podcast, motherfuckers.
Randomly got an email the other day about that.
That's so cool. Yeah, we were on at least on a website shouting out Class Horrorcast of being one of the number one podcasts in Ireland, horror podcasts in Ireland to listen to in 2024 is pretty awesome. We're gonna reach the charts, I do believe, the Class Horrorcast. There's a lot of stuff that we do a lot differently. So anyone that listens to this, go support Class Horrorcast. Give us 5-star rating reviews. All the time. I don't know how to end this stuff, so I'm just going to keep ranting on. But I want everybody to understand that I love all the listeners of the show. Anybody that listens and participates, share our show, post it on stories. If you're listening to it while you're at work or driving or at home, share that stuff to your social media. We will appreciate it. It does do more than you'll ever understand. I've actually seen a bunch of people buying shirts recently on Class Horrorcast. I saw a couple people actually got the Stay Strange, Not Asleep shirt. Somebody bought my Fuck the World Economic Forum shirt because I literally I made a shirt that said Fuck the World Economic Forum. I actually want to get that shirt. And somebody purchased that, and I just released it. So we do have a lot of cool merch out there. And then once I get it finalized and sent it to Aaron, we do need to put out that Horny for Horror shirt because I showed Brett it, and Brett was like, I like it. It's very seductive and creepy.
For sure.
Looking.
There's definitely cool stuff I think we can do as well on the horror side. With like merch and things. Yeah.
I got ideas. Sure. So everybody go support the shows. Anything you want to add there, horny horror boy?
No, just stay horny for horror, stay horny for true crime, and we'll see you guys very, very soon.
Yeah, stay strong.